Silence is not weakness. It is a psychological weapon and a power that most people simply do not understand. Imagine you are standing in a crowded room and someone levels a sharp, stinging insult directly at you. In an instant, your heart rate spikes. Your mind races 100 miles an hour, and your face flushes hot. Your blood boils, and your ego screams for a clever comeback, a way to hurt them just as much as they just hurt you. In that split second, you are standing at a dangerous crossroads. One path leads to a shouting match where you both look small, losing the respect of everyone watching. The other path, the ancient Stoic path, leads to a level of psychological dominance so profound that the person who insulted you ends up feeling like they have just thrown a pebble at an impenetrable mountain. Our natural human instinct is often to get defensive, to lash out, and to fight back with equally sharp words. We feel attacked, and so we attack back. But here is the hidden truth about human psychology that cuts deeper than any insult the very moment you lose your temper. You have handed your leash to your enemy. You have given them the key to your mind. You are no longer the master of your own soul. You have become a puppet, dancing exactly to the tune of their disrespect. When someone insults you, they want one thing above all else. They want your reaction. The moment you get defensive, they win the game. They try to control you with their words, hoping to steal your calm, your confidence, and your peace. You feel the overwhelming pressure to validate your intelligence, to defend your pride, to prove a point, and to show that you are not someone to be messed with. Society tells us that we must always respond, that we must always explain, and that we must always stand up for ourselves. Society praises the people who fight back, who argue loudly, and who dominate debates. But the Stoic mindset flips this logic completely upside down. You do not have to turn this into a battle. You do not have to let their emotional chaos infect your mental space. Every single time you react impulsively to an insult, you surrender your power. You allow another person's ego to dictate your energy and your emotions. You are letting someone else's chaos hijack your clarity. But what if the strongest, most powerful response was actually the complete opposite of what society expects? The ancient Stoic philosophers and emperors possessed a mental arsenal designed to handle these exact moments of extreme disrespect. They understood that to maintain your authority, you do not need a sharper tongue, you need a stronger mind. They utilized a response so subtle, so precise, and so devastatingly effective that it instantly ends arguments, protects your energy, and preserves your dignity without ever raising your voice. It is a calculated, deadly silence wrapped in complete emotional control. You are going to learn the exact psychological framework that the greatest minds in history used to instantly neutralize any negative force from the outside. You will discover how to detach your ego from the toxic words of others, how to stop being a reactive participant, and how to become the untouchable master of your own mind. You are going to learn how to deploy a calm authority that strips the aggressor of all their power and leaves them exposed, uncomfortable, and questioning their own behavior. If you want to know how to destroy disrespect instantly without saying a single angry word, you must first realize that your mind is your fortress, and your silence is the wall that protects it. Let us freeze that exact moment in the crowded room, right after the insult has been spoken and is still hanging heavily in the air. What has actually happened? If you strip away your ego and look at the situation objectively, the person standing in front of you has merely expelled air from their lungs, moved their vocal cords, and produced a series of sound waves. That is all. The ancient philosopher Epictetus laid down a golden rule for this very second. It is never the words themselves that hurt you, but your own internal judgment about those words. Until you consciously decide to accept their statement as an insult, it remains nothing more than vibrating air. You are the one who takes those meaningless sounds and forges them into a weapon against your own mind. Think about it carefully. If a stranger walked up to you and yelled the exact same hostile phrase in a language you do not understand, your blood would not boil. You would not feel humiliated. You might even smile or walk away confused. Why? Because you did not decode their words and give them power over your emotions. Now, you must turn your attention to the person who is attacking you and understand the illusion of the false mirror. Society conditions us to feel that an insult points out our own hidden flaws. But the Stoics knew better. When that person tries to belittle your intelligence or attack your character, they are holding up a mirror. But they are absolutely not showing you your own reflection. Instead, they are broadcasting their own internal chaos, their own deep-seated insecurities, and their own unresolved pain. Happy, highly secure, and fulfilled individuals simply do not go around a room trying to tear other people down. An insult is never a factual statement about who you are. It is always a tragic confession of the speaker's own misery. They are suffering from a psychological wound. And because they do not have the mental discipline to handle their own emotional turmoil, they lash out. They want to drag you down into their chaotic storm so that they do not have to suffer alone. Once you fully grasp this psychological reality, everything in your body changes. The burning heat in your face vanishes. Your racing heart slows down to a calm and steady rhythm. You no longer see a powerful enemy standing before you, demanding a fight. Instead, you see a fragile human being who is mentally ill-equipped to manage their own mind, desperately crying out for your reaction to validate their ego. This profound realization is the paradigm shift that transforms your anger into pity. It takes you out of the defensive posture of a victim and places you on the untouchable high ground of an observer. You realize that their toxic energy is entirely their own burden to carry, and you do not have to catch the poison they are throwing. You stand firm, completely untouched, knowing that absolutely no human being on this earth possesses the power to diminish your inherent worth without your explicit consent. Now that you see the insult for what it truly is, it is time to open the ancient Stoic armory and deploy your weapons. You are no longer a victim reacting to a stinging blow. You are a tactician stepping onto the battlefield of human psychology. Your first and most devastating weapon is tactical silence. When the hostile words leave their mouth, do not rush to fill the dead air with a defensive response. Instead, stop, count to 3 in your head, and look them directly in the eyes with a completely calm and neutral expression. This deliberate pause is the most uncomfortable thing an aggressor can experience. By not responding immediately, you are signaling that their words have not even registered as a threat. You are essentially asking, without uttering a single syllable, if that is the absolute best they can do. This sudden shift in energy transfers the entire weight of the awkwardness and the pressure directly back onto their shoulders. They expected an emotional reaction, but by giving them absolute nothingness, you make their outburst look foolish and small. Silence is not a white flag of surrender. It is a profound display of dominance. However, if the situation requires you to speak, you move to the second technique, which is psychological judo. Instead of matching their force with defensive force, you absorb their momentum and reflect it right back. If someone attempts to mock your intelligence or character, give a slight, unbothered smile and reply calmly, "Interesting. Tell me more." Suddenly, the script they prepared in their head is completely destroyed. You are not fighting, you are observing. By inviting them to continue, you expose their true intentions, and because they were only looking for a quick reaction, their attack loses all its momentum. Alternatively, you can deploy a quiet, unshakable acceptance by simply saying, "You might be right." This line is a weapon of absolute serenity. When you acknowledge the possibility of their statement without taking a defensive stance, you extinguish the fire they were desperately trying to ignite. The aggressor is left feeling confused and deeply uncomfortable because they were anticipating a loud battle, and instead, They hit an immovable wall of peace. Finally, when faced with someone who constantly tries to drag you into petty arguments to prove their superiority, you must deploy the ultimate boundary. Look at them with quiet authority and state, "I do not compete in that category." This response immediately establishes the high ground without needing to raise your voice. It communicates, without any arrogance, that your energy and your intellect are not up for grabs in trivial, ego-driven contests. You refuse to lower yourself to their level of chaos. You protect your mental space and demonstrate a level of self-mastery that they cannot possibly comprehend. Through tactical silence and psychological judo, you do not just survive the disrespect, you completely neutralize the aggressor, leaving your inner fortress entirely untouched. Once you have successfully neutralized the immediate threat using tactical silence or psychological judo, you must elevate your mindset to the next level of this philosophy, which is the practice of Stoic alchemy. An alchemist transforms worthless metals into pure gold, and in the exact same way, a master of the mind transforms toxic, disrespectful energy into profound internal strength. This is where you completely change your relationship with negative people. Most individuals go through life praying that they will never encounter a rude or insulting person. They want a life completely free of friction. But the ancient philosophers understood a fundamental truth about human growth. You cannot build a strong physical body without lifting heavy resistance. And you absolutely cannot build an unshakable mind without facing difficult people. Think of the person who is insulting you not as an enemy, but as a heavily loaded barbell in the gymnasium of life. When you go to a gym and lift a heavy weight, you do not get angry at the iron for being heavy. You know that the severe resistance is exactly what makes your muscles grow. In the exact same way, when an insecure or angry person directs their toxicity at you, they are handing you a psychological weight. They are giving you a free opportunity to practice your patience, your emotional control, and your absolute detachment. Instead of feeling victimized, you should look at the situation objectively and use the challenge to your advantage. The philosopher Epictetus once asked what would have become of the legendary hero Hercules if he had never faced any brutal monsters or overwhelming challenges. He would have just rolled over and gone to sleep in luxury, and his immense strength would have completely withered away. Your mental strength works the exact same way. If you are never tested by the disrespect of others, your emotional discipline will become soft, fragile, and weak. Every single time someone tries to drag you down into their chaos and you refuse to react, you are completing a mental repetition. You are adding another impenetrable layer of armor to your psychological fortress. You take the negative energy they are desperately trying to force upon you, and instead of throwing it back at them, you absorb the moment and use it as fuel to solidify your own peace. You look at their desperate attempt to seek validation through cruelty, and you use it as a powerful reminder of exactly the kind of person you never want to become. You realize that their hostility is actually a brilliant teacher, because it shows you the tragic and exhausting consequences of living without self-mastery. By choosing not to participate in their emotional storm, you are constantly proving to yourself that your peace of mind is not dependent on the good behavior of the outside world. Your happiness is an internal structure that you alone control. This transformation is the ultimate psychological victory, because you have taken a hostile moment that was specifically designed to break you down, and you have masterfully converted it into the exact mechanism that builds you up. This transformation brings us to the ultimate truth about human dynamics and the final stage of your mental mastery. When you observe human interactions closely, you will always notice one undeniable fact. The loudest person in the room is almost always the weakest. The individual who is screaming, throwing insults, and desperately trying to provoke a reaction is not displaying power. They are displaying a complete lack of emotional control. They are broadcasting their fragility to the entire world. On the other hand, the person who can stand in the center of that chaotic storm, look the aggressor directly in the eyes, and remain entirely silent is the one who holds the absolute power in the situation. Society has conditioned us to believe that dominance is about crushing your opponent with a sharper comeback or a much louder voice. But true authority is absolutely not the ability to crush your enemies. It is the ability to remain completely indifferent to their desperate attempts to crush you. When you trade an insult for an insult, you step down from your high fortress and walk right into the mud with your attacker. You validate their toxic behavior by mirroring it. And in that exact moment, you become their twin. You give them exactly what they want, which is your energy, your attention, and your peace of mind. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius understood this psychological reality better than anyone else in history. He ruled the entire known world, yet he faced constant betrayal, blatant disrespect, and harsh criticism. His personal rule for handling these attacks was brilliantly simple and devastatingly effective. He wrote that the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. You must let that profound concept sink deep into your psychology. The greatest revenge is not a clever response. It is not destroying their reputation. The ultimate revenge is simply refusing to become the kind of chaotic, insecure person who needs to insult others just to feel important. When you respond to disrespect with calm, focused excellence and absolute silence, you prove their negative words false without ever having to argue your case. You show everyone watching that your self-worth is rooted entirely in your own character, which you control completely, rather than in the praise or the blame of others, which you do not control at all. You are deciding that absolutely no human being, regardless of their status or their volume, has the power to change your mood or alter your direction without your explicit consent. This is what it means to be truly untouchable in a modern world addicted to outrage. You are no longer a victim of circumstance, and you are no longer a reactive slave to the toxic opinions of the outside world. Your mind is a sovereign territory. From this day forward, whenever an insecure person attempts to bring their emotional chaos into your life, you know exactly what to do. You do not fight. You do not explain yourself. You simply close the heavy iron doors of your mind. Look at them with quiet authority and let them completely exhaust themselves against your unbreakable wall of silence. There will inevitably be moments, however, when absolute silence is not a practical option. You might find yourself in a mandatory corporate meeting, a stressful negotiation, or a forced family gathering where an insecure individual is relentlessly trying to drag you into their toxic storm. They might twist your words, mock your perspective, or raise their voice, desperately seeking that emotional reaction we discussed earlier. In these specific scenarios, your unbreakable wall of silence needs a verbal equivalent, a spoken boundary that completely shuts down their manipulation without compromising your calm authority. This brings us to another devastatingly effective tool in the Stoic arsenal, which is the power of the final word. When an aggressor is pushing for a fight, society conditions us to think that we must argue back with logic, present facts, and defend our position until the bitter end. But the ancient philosophers knew that engaging with irrationality is never a victory. It is a complete waste of your mental energy. Instead of raising your voice or matching their hostility, look the person directly in the eyes with a completely unbothered expression and state calmly, "This conversation is no longer productive." The psychological impact of this single sentence is massive. You do not insult them, you do not attack their character, and you do not raise your heart rate. You simply recognize the futility of arguing with a chaotic mind and you choose to walk away. By doing this, you instantly achieve three critical things. First, you protect your own mental space from their infection. Second, you expose the absolute weakness of their behavior, because their aggression loses all meaning when you refuse to participate. Third, you instantly shift the power dynamic of the entire room. They are left standing there, talking to the empty air, while you remain composed, unaffected, and in complete control of your time and your peace. You are sending a clear, undeniable message to everyone watching that you do not compete in petty squabbles, and you will never allow another person's ego to dictate your actions. If the aggressor continues to push, you can deploy an even simpler boundary that acts as a mirror to their chaos. As they raise their voice and try to humiliate you, just offer a slight smile and say softly, "Have a good day." At first glance, this might seem too polite or even passive, but in the realm of human psychology, it is a weapon of absolute mastery. It is a calm dismissal of their entire existence in that moment. The aggressor expects a fight, they expect anger, and they expect you to meet their hostility with equal force. By offering a polite, indifferent farewell, you completely disrupt their expectations and neutralize their attack. Their goal was emotional manipulation, and you have just handed them total indifference. You are proving that their words have absolutely zero value to you, and that their judgment cannot penetrate the fortress of your mind. You step away from the mud and leave them to wrestle with their own misery, proving once again that true dominance is never loud or reactive, but always quiet, deliberate, and entirely untouchable. As you master the art of walking away from loud and aggressive confrontations, you will inevitably encounter a different, more insidious form of disrespect. This is the subtle, passive-aggressive attack. It might come as unsolicited advice about your life choices, a sarcastic comment disguised as a joke, or a quiet attempt to undermine your intelligence in front of your peers. Because these attacks do not involve raised voices, society conditions us to feel obligated to defend our position, to explain our reasoning, and to prove our worth. But the Stoic mind recognizes that a subtle attack is still an attack, and defending yourself against it is still handing over your power. When you are faced with this quiet toxicity, you must deploy a response that is deceptively polite, but psychologically devastating. You simply look at them and say, "Thank you for your opinion." On the surface, this phrase seems entirely neutral, almost harmless. But underneath that calm delivery lies a profound assertion of dominance. When you say this, you are communicating to the aggressor that you hear their words, you recognize their perspective, but you absolutely refuse to give their judgment any power over your reality. The person criticizing you expects one of two things. They want you to agree with them and submit to their dominance, or they want you to get defensive and argue, which validates that their opinion matters to you. By offering a calm, unbothered thank you, you deny them both. You absorb their momentum and let it fall harmlessly to the ground. You extinguish the argument without ever compromising your standards or lowering yourself to their level of petty debate. If the person continues to press, trying to force you into a corner or demanding that you justify your actions, you elevate your boundary even further by stating, "Believe what you want. My life will not change." This is the ultimate declaration of personal sovereignty. It is a quiet reminder that your internal peace and your external choices are not subject to a public vote. Most people spend their entire lives desperately trying to manage what other people think of them. They twist themselves into knots trying to be understood and validated by individuals who do not even understand themselves. The Stoic completely abandons this exhausting game. By telling an insecure critic to believe whatever they want, you are exposing the utter futility of their judgment. You are showing them that their negative perception is their own burden to carry, and it has absolutely zero impact on the trajectory of your life. Finally, when faced with someone who is relentlessly committed to misunderstanding you, you must use the most powerful conceptual tool of all. You must categorize their disrespect as nothing more than noise. As the ancient philosophers understood, reason is intentional, structured, and valuable, whereas noise is chaotic, fleeting, and entirely meaningless. When you look at an insulting person and realize that their words are just the rattling of an uncontrolled mind, you no longer feel the urge to explain yourself. You do not explain yourself to a barking dog or a howling wind, and you do not explain yourself to human noise. You protect your time, you preserve your energy, and you maintain your untouchable calm, proving that true intelligence is not about winning an argument, but about recognizing what is absolutely not worth your breath. When you have successfully categorized their passive-aggressive comments as meaningless noise, you may eventually face an opponent who tries a completely different strategy. They will try to overwhelm you with a massive wave of pure, unregulated emotion. They will shout, they will act dramatically, and they will attempt to hijack the entire room by making their feelings seem more important than objective reality. Society often rewards this behavior. Modern culture tells us that we must always validate how someone else feels, even if their feelings are entirely irrational. But the ancient Stoic philosophers understood that your mind cannot be held hostage by the emotional chaos of another person. Emotions are merely internal data. They are not universal directives, and they certainly do not dictate the truth. When an aggressor tries to manipulate you by throwing a tantrum or using their feelings as a weapon against your character, you must deploy a boundary that instantly shifts the power dynamic. You look at them with absolute calm and say, "Let us stay on facts, not feelings." This single sentence is incredibly devastating to a toxic person. It immediately removes all the fuel from their emotional fire. You are communicating that their subjective drama holds absolutely zero weight in your reality. You force them to step out of their chaotic emotional state and present actual evidence, which they almost never have. They wanted to drag you into a shouting match, but instead, they hit a brick wall of pure logic. If they continue to escalate, if they raise their voice even louder and try to intimidate you with sheer volume, you bring out an even more powerful psychological weapon. You lean back, maintain unwavering eye contact, and say softly, "Calm down, I will wait." There are very few responses in the human language as psychologically dominating as this one. By telling an angry person that you will patiently wait for them to finish their tantrum, you are holding up a massive mirror to their complete lack of self-control. You do not match their volume. You do not defend your position. You simply observe them as if they are a small child throwing a fit in a public place. Your unbreakable silence highlights how completely ridiculous they look to everyone else in the room. They realize, in a split second, that their anger has absolutely no power over you. Their intensity is completely useless. By refusing to let their raging emotions hijack your own internal peace, you establish yourself as the untouchable master of the situation. Furthermore, if they try to trap you in an endless loop of arguing by forcing you to explain yourself over and over again, you cut the cord entirely. You state firmly, "I have already said what I needed to say." You refuse to repeat yourself for someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. You prove once again that true power is never loud. True power is never reactive. And true power never has to shout to be deeply respected. As we reach the culmination of this psychological framework, it is vital to step back and look at the profound transformation you have undergone. You have evolved from a reactive participant who was easily triggered by the chaos of others into an untouchable observer, an architect of your own peace. The ultimate truth you must carry with you into every single interaction is that disrespect is merely a test of your internal boundaries. When you master the techniques we have discussed, from tactical silence to maintaining your focus on objective facts, you stop playing the unwinnable game of ego. You realize that the people who spend their days throwing insults and seeking conflict are actually drowning in their own misery. They are desperately reaching out for a lifeline of attention, hoping to pull you under the water with them. But you do not have to drown. You do not even have to get wet. By refusing to engage, you grant yourself the highest form of human freedom. You are deciding that absolutely no one, regardless of their status, their wealth, or their volume, has the power to dictate your emotional state without your explicit permission. Think of your mind as an impenetrable fortress. People can stand outside the walls and throw stones all day long, But those stones will never bring the walls down unless you choose to walk over and unlock the heavy iron gates from the inside. Your anger, your defensiveness, and your desperate need to prove yourself are the only things that can open those gates. Keep them firmly shut. When you encounter someone who is disrespectful, loud, or toxic, view them not as an enemy to be destroyed, but as an excellent opportunity to practice your self-mastery. Let them exhaust their aggressive energy against your silence. Let their words echo harmlessly into the void. Society will always try to convince you that true power looks like domination, that it is loud, aggressive, and ruthless. But the ancient philosophers have shown us the reality. True power is profoundly quiet. True power is the ability to look at an insult, recognize it as meaningless noise, and simply walk away completely unaffected. It is the deep, unshakable confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are, independent of the fleeting opinions of the outside world. From this moment forward, make a binding contract with yourself. Commit to protecting your mental energy with the same fierce dedication that you would use to protect your own life. Do not give the precious currency of your attention to those who absolutely do not deserve it. Close the heavy doors of your mind to the noise, the drama, and the disrespect. Master your own reactions. Anchor yourself in your own values, and watch as the world naturally aligns with your calm authority. The next time the storm of disrespect tries to surround you, remember your training, hold your ground, and let your silence be your absolute and final victory. The greatest victory is not over your enemies, but over your own mind. When you choose silence, you choose freedom. Now it is your turn to put this into practice. If this video helped you shift your perspective, leave a comment below, sharing a moment when you successfully stayed calm in the face of disrespect. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more lessons on mastering your mind and living with stoic power. Until next time, keep your inner fortress strong, protect your peace, and remember that your calm is your ultimate weapon. See you next video.